Hello and welcome to Mobile Interactions Now, the podcast where industry pros share firsthand experiences on making mobile interactions work. I'm Chris and I'm part of the team here at TenTech. On today's episode, we're joined by Malte Kosub. Malte is the managing director and co-founder of Parloa. Parloa helps teams create engaging conversations with their customers via chat or voice assistants. So, here is part one of our conversation with Malte. Take it away, Gene.
Malte, welcome to the show. We gave a little intro in the beginning, but I'm sure they would like to hear more from you. So can you just introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, sure, Gene. Hi, I'm Malte. I'm one of the founders of Parloa. I have been dealing with conversational AI for more than 3.5 years now. We started out with an agency consulting big companies around Europe, and shortly realized that there is a lack of infrastructure for teams building conversational AI, building automated dialogues um, for customers. So we built Parloa for companies to enable their teams building those automated dialogues. I'm a business guy. Founded an e-commerce store before, and then I wanted to do something like a little bit more deep tech, so I decided to do something with conversational AI. We are based in Berlin. We are more than 20 people here, and I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. It's great to have you today, especially because we've been getting a lot of questions regarding chatbots these days, especially with some of the integration problems and chatbots being dumber than they hoped and all those fun questions. So I would love to just unpack some of the complexity or fun that's involved in making chatbot, actually that's useful. So let me start right there. What are we really accomplishing by using chatbots that we weren't able to do before?
Yeah, that really is a good question, and I think it all is based on a development which started about 10 years ago, when more or less deep learning and machine learning algorithm took over and made natural language understanding much better. So by now we are able to grasp much more complexity when a customer asks something to a company. So we can not just try to interpret what the user wants to say, so the intent. We can also extract some entities. So I can ask my bank how much I spent last week on food. So it's not just the intent. So I want to know how much did I spend. I also can ask to which time, so last week, and the category, so the food. So the way the questions can be structured are much more complex, and through that development over the last 5 to 10 years, more and more is currently being implemented in companies. And I think when we talk about natural language understanding, we always need to talk about different parts of the natural language understanding. So one thing is the automated speech recognition, so the translation from an audio file into text. Microsoft and Google reached 95% accuracy rate. So 95% of the words can be translated right by these algorithms, and they released that in 2017. So about 2 to 3 years ago, we reached 95%. What is so important or interesting about 95%? A call center agent understands 95% of what the other person is saying. So we reached human level when it comes to translating an audio file into text about 2 or 3 years ago. So that's more or less the first step when, for example, we want to automate the call center. But then, very importantly for chatbots, we have the natural language understanding. So this is the software which tries to understand what the user is saying and tries to export the entities I just talked about, for example, a time or category of spendings. And also in that space, we are seeing a lot of development. 2 years ago, roughly 1.5 years ago, Google announced Bird, a totally new or very big step in that part. So I think also in the natural language understanding, we're seeing a lot of development. We're seeing a lot of startups evolving. We're seeing the big tech companies investing a lot in that field. So yeah, it's evolving, and we're seeing a lot of progress.
That sort of begs the question. From business point of view, and I understand these enabling technologies are really, really evolving quite fast. But is it more of that? What's driving current deployments, or is it more of a customers are actually hitting certain tipping point where the demand is just no longer can be ignored? Is it consumer demand, or is it more of a tech readiness? What do you see?
That is a really good question, and I think there's no one answer to that. I think it depends on the channel, for example. It depends on the use case. When we talk about digital assistants, for example, Alexa and Google Assistant, there is a totally new demand coming up. So it's a demand which was not there before. So companies need to think about how to be present on those platforms. So that's totally new. When we talk about call centers, for example, there is a high demand, and you probably also know these old IVR system. Please press the 1, please press the 2, and this can be done much better. So I would say it's not like direct customer demand, but there is the possibility to make an experience better. So that's regarding call center. And for chat, I think this is slowly starting that customers really demand that there is a chat more or less on which they can use to contact a company. So rather it is, or it could be on the website, it could be WhatsApp, it could be the Facebook Messenger. And I have the feeling that this is evolving, especially chat is evolving pretty fast, and the demand is getting more and more important. On the other side, we see a lot of companies, and we have been working for the biggest companies in Europe when it comes to conversational AI. And they all started a few years ago because they saw there is something happening, and they all started with small POCs for small use cases, and now are integrating that teams and those teams and the technology into their like main infrastructure. So I think it's a little bit of both, and it depends a little bit on the channel.
So I understand your company works with the different interfaces, voice and chat apps and all those. But we're starting to see a lot of chat apps actually appearing inside of messaging apps and things like this. Why do you think this is happening now?
I think that why more chat channels coming up, and I think is that the question? Why are we getting more chat channels in the ecosystem? And I think that is because, first of all, sure, the technology evolved over the last years, and users are getting used to write a lot via their smartphones, for example, and that's where the customers are. They are at WhatsApp, they are on Facebook Messenger, they're getting used to chat to get their message out. And I believe that companies want to be there where the customers are, and if it's easier to write to a company via WhatsApp because the people are there, than searching for a hotline on the web, and it takes you 2 minutes to even find the hotline and then call them and wait 4 minutes in the queue. It might be a lot easier and faster to just write them, and maybe the first 30 seconds is automated, and maybe then you can directly write or chat with an agent. So I think companies already want to be there where the customers are, first. And second, when we talk about bots, the technology got better over the last 5 to 10 years, and also for platforms, it takes some time to integrate and make it possible. And now we're seeing that, for example, with WhatsApp, that they make it possible for companies to also integrate good bots and systems to write with customers. So maybe these are reasons for that change.
I was chatting with some of my colleagues in terms of um, some of the value-added things that happens when you have these interactions somehow integrated to the back end. Is there inherent advantage where text-based interactions, how it's used with the analytics versus some of the voice interface or something like that? Is this part of what's driving in the back end as well?
I think chat has the advantage versus when we compare it to voice, that we don't have the automated speech recognition. So we directly have the text there. We don't need to translate the audio file into text. So there's one component which can cause some errors, which we don't have in chat. Then we have a visual component there, so we can show something to the user, and always when we can show something to the user, the interaction can be faster, because you can read much faster than you can listen to someone who answers to you. So I think the chat interface has a lot of potential and advantages versus voice. However, if you talk to someone via voice, you as a customer can articulate your questions much faster. You can speak roughly about 140 words a minute, and you can write, I don't know, it depends a little bit, like roughly 50 or 60. So you're much faster when you speak. But for when it comes to a bot, I think having a chatbot is a little bit easier, because you have this visual interface. You can have suggestion chips or suggestion button, and so you can give the user some feedback what the user can say, or what the user can click. And in voice, it's a little bit more complicated. So I think there are some advantages when we talk about chatbots versus voice bots.
That's really interesting. So we talked about the having service in a way that answering questions in a fast way, and I consider myself as a rather impatient consumer when it comes to that. So can you take us into the back room of companies, doing businesses? What really is involved using systematically this kind of technology to speed up that interaction to the level where today's consumers can be satisfied with?
Okay, so I think that's a very important question. What should companies do to use that technology and to build cutting edge experiences? So I think there are different parts which companies need to do. The first thing is they need to understand that conversational AI is a whole new kind of knowledge they need to integrate into their company. So there are voice user interface designers or conversational designer who build a speech model, who know how a natural language understanding works. So you first need to build up a team, a dedicated team, maybe together with an external agency, or you can just do it internally, which knows how to work with conversational AI. This team then needs to train the bot, if you want to do parts of it in an automated way, which trains this bot. Because if you start to build a bot and then you deploy it, and then you just started with it, the journey just begun, and then the actual work starts, because you need to make the bot much better. So you start maybe with 25% automation, then next week you're 26 and 27, and so every day you need to look at the past conversations, look with what worked, what didn't work, and then you need to use that. We call it training data, to make the conversation better. And just to name one example, someone asked a question and the bot respond, "Sorry, I can't help you with that," or "I don't know what you meant." So now I need to take that sentence and to integrate it into my speech model. So the next time someone asks this question, it gets answered right. So, and there you or companies need people sitting there and just doing that. It's actual work. And I think a lot of companies think, well, it's AI and everything is magical. Well, yeah, there is some machine learning in there, but in fact, at the end, you need people to see what is working, what is not working, to train the model. So you need a team first. You need the team to work on it on a daily basis if you really want to build a good bot. And last but not least, you need to have good APIs in place. So, and if you just want to build an FAQ bot without any connection to a backend, this might be a good start. But if you really want to build good use cases, you need to connect the dialogue, the experience with your backends. And we experience a lot of trouble with that because a lot of companies starting to build a lot of good APIs and scaling APIs and fast APIs, but you really need to have those to build end-to-end use cases. And if you have all those three things in place, I think you really can build good experiences. But it's not something which is there automatically if you start and then it's there. It is a process and you need to keep optimizing it. Yeah, but those three things I think are important.
When you describe the bot start saying, "Oh, sorry, I didn't get that," all those scenario, you are describing my past couple of weeks. I was working with a chatbot developer for
Yeah.
a simple nonprofit organization FAQ,
Yeah.
quick Q&A. And you start facing yourself. Some people don't say no, they say nope, sure thing, and completely different way. Yeah. But as I was looking at revising the flow and keep working with the script, I was starting to be a little resentful, and I was going, okay, are you training me or am I training you, kind of scenario. So now here's your chance. Is there like some tips, tricks as a pros that how what they have to really expect when they start really training the bots so that it doesn't get into the anger mode I was in last week?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think you will, in the next years, you will not be able to answer 100% of the questions. So there will always be 30, 40, maybe 20, maybe 60% of questions which are answered wrong. So there must be something which satisfies the customer. And we really try to, and that's maybe a tip for everyone doing conversational design, try to think about not the happy path, also try to think about the error path and try to do a very good error handling. So try to first of all one more time, can can the user rephrase what he said? And maybe at the second time you can be also a little bit and be transparent, say, well, sorry, I'm not able to answer that. I'm still learning. I'm learning every day. So I think it's important to set the expectance right for the customer, and don't say, well, I can do everything, and then you can't everything and the customer is unsatisfied. Be transparent, say I'm learning, and then you can be, it depends a little bit on the company's profile, but you can be a little bit like, be friendly to him, and maybe have a little joke. And I think this really makes the experience differently, and maybe even if you can't help the user say, well, they try, they get better, and I know it's not perfect. So it's always important not just think about the happy path, and always and spend a lot of time thinking about error handling and about those situations when something is not working. And I experience that a lot of companies spend too less time on the things which are not working, than just focusing on the happy path.
I absolutely love what you just said. because it is a completely different way of looking at my previous last week's experience, and it also makes me think like I think at the end of the day, even machine interaction, machine to human interaction, I think I may not be remembering every response I received, but it's the feeling that I got. I interacted with the machine. There was a better than expected interaction, that little smile that I can walk away with. So I absolutely, if I imagine my user leaving the experience with that's what I'm hearing. So you put me into a completely different mode of thinking about this. With that goal, though, what you are describing also opens up this, like there's a functionality of a chatbot, and there's this style part of this, almost like a personality. And as you mentioned, depends on what the company is, and there's an appropriateness to this, right? What kind of personality you take on, because you may not, some people may not understand the interaction just saying, hey, I'm still learning. I'm like, then why are you already deployed, right? So tell me a little bit of like how brands can think about this in terms of matching up with their personality that they want to personify.
Yeah. 3 thoughts on that. I think the first thing, a persona really needs to fit to the to the brand. So I think to be friendly and maybe to be a little bit funny is always good in such a dialogue, and to be transparent and say, "Wow, we're learning," and but each company needs to decide that by themselves. But it's important to think about it. A lot of companies just like having a lot of developers develop the experience, but then it's an experience developed by developers. And if you no company would develop a web page just by developer. They have UX designers and front end designers, and then they have developers implementing that. And I think it's the same when it comes to conversational development. You need developers to develop it, and you need also designers to design it. And one thing is, you have a corporate identity for your homepage, and you also should have a corporate identity for your dialogues. Second thing is, you said, well, you should first deploy it when it's perfect, and that's impossible right now. So just try to give the user an impression that there is a point when we need to start, and we thought we might be able to start right now, and you are helping us to make it better. We need your feedback. So I think you need feedback from real users to really make it better, because if we both together try to generate a lot of training data, we will never be able to think about all different ways a customer can express themselves. So there are 5,000 ways to ask for the weather. 5,000. We both would never be able to come up with all the different ideas. So you need training data. You need real customer feedback. And the third thing is, in best case, you have real agents which are then being connected to the user. So say, well, unfortunately, I can't answer that. I'm still learning every day, but I really want to help you. So I'm connecting you to the real person. And if you do that, you can learn. And even if you just automate 20 or 25%, the rest you're connecting to a real person, and then the customer at the end is satisfied. So I think that to just have a bot without real persons at the end can work. I would always suggest to have real person, so to have a human hand over when the bot is not working properly or just can't answer the question.
Thank you again to Malte Kosub for joining us today. Don't forget to tune in to our next episode for the conclusion of the conversation with Malte. You can find out more about Malte and Parloa at parloa.com. To find out more about Gene and Tintech, visit tintech.com. Make sure to search for Mobile Interactions Now in Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Tintech, thanks for listening.